very good evening to you and welcome to this Thursday's edition of the Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvogo. Another police commissioner looks set to bite the dust. We'll take you back to an interview we did with Sitole 7 weeks ago before we speak to our guest who has written a book on the future of policing in South Africa. After that interview, we focus on polls of a different kind. University SRC elections. Are they telling us anything about the youth we often say is apathetic, or even the shifting political dynamics we are seeing on campuses? We end the program with an update on that DA Phoenix election poster debacle. The Watchdog starts now. As many of you would know by now, President Cyril Ramaphosa has asked National Police Commissioner Sitole to make representations as to why he should not be suspended. Acting Presidential Spokesperson Tyrone Sill explains.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has, in terms of Section 8.3 of the South African Police Service Act, invited the National Commission of Police, General Sitole, to make representations on the President's notice to suspend the Commissioner. The President wrote to the National Commissioner on the 20th of September in connection with allegations of the failure of the Commissioner to assist the Independent Police Investigative Directorate in some of its investigations. These allegations emerged publicly and became the subject of a finding by Judge Norman Davis in the Pretoria High Court. The President has indicated to the National Commissioner that the issues arising from the High Court judgment are serious. The President has, in terms of Section 9 of the South African Police Service Act of 1995, read with Section 8 of the same Act, deemed it appropriate at this stage to institute a board of inquiry into the National Commissioner's alleged misconduct and fitness to hold office of National Commissioner of Police. This is also merited by the public interest in the integrity of the office of the National Commissioner. The President outlined this context in his letter to General Sitole and gave the Commissioner 14 days in which to respond.
Now, even people who have been remotely following what's been happening around the policing know by now would know by now, I should say, that the step the President has taken was a long time coming. Only General Sitole, it would seem, didn't see this day coming. Now, about 7 weeks ago on this program, not only did I ask him what he would say or do if the President were to advise him to step aside, I also asked him about that refusal to assist IPID, a matter he subsequently took to court and lost, and which has now formed the basis of his impending suspension. Take a listen to a small part of that conversation. What if the President has made up his mind and feels that you are simply not up to the job? And then he calls you and says, Commissioner, tell me what you can still do. Puts you in his office and says, can you still do something to turn the situation around? What would you say to him if you said you had just a couple of minutes to tell him what you could do potentially if you were to be given the resources that you're talking about? What would those be? What would your response be?
I'm not sure whether you're asking the question on behalf of the President, but I would like to believe that there would always be a rationale behind the question. He shall have used a particular situation to substantiate it. And I think I can respond to the question based on the situation created that triggered the question.
There are people who say you probably have no time fighting crime because you are busy fighting your own survival battles. How's your relationship with the minister?
My relationship with the minister, I have repeatedly indicated that at professional level it is average and it is normal. We haven't started sharing a relationship beyond the professional lines, but at the present moment we are working together and we are doing everything together what is prescribed by the laws that are governing this relationship.
Do you think that the Supreme Court of Appeal judgment has helped that relationship?
Yeah, remember, whether we have a judgment or not, there are certain responsibilities of the minister which must be fulfilled by the minister, and there are responsibilities that are supposed to be fulfilled by myself. If the minister does his work or I do my work, nothing is personal between the two of us. I think in front of us there's South Africa, there's the South Africans, and we must create their safety. So the judgment does not change anything, but it's a judgment that is based on a specific issue and outcome.
But then, I mean, it does or should affect your relationship. I mean, if the minister has written to you and feels that he's not getting, answers to very obvious questions, some of which actually comes from the person you're saying is the commander-in-chief of the security forces. So obviously, I mean, if there are questions to be asked about your conduct, about your behavior, and the courts confirm that indeed those questions should have been asked. So that is bound to actually affect your relationship with the minister and whether you should, in fact, continue as National Police Commissioner.
Remember, the minister has got an obligation to perform his job as an executive and account to the president. And for him to explain anything to the president, he must ask me for explanation. That is his job, which we cannot change.
My conversation with General Sitole there 7 weeks ago, on the day the crime statistics were published. Well, to make a sense of it all and for some insights into the problems of policing in this country, let's welcome Ziyanda Stirman, who's a security expert and the author of the book, Can We Be Safe? The Future of Policing in South Africa. Good evening. Thank you very much for your time. I don't know what you make. Listening to, I'm still astounded, by how General Sitole, treated this whole thing, especially over the past few months, where it seemed to all and sundry that the writing was indeed on the wall. But if you listen to, which was the whole point of me playing or replaying that interview again, he seemed to be the only one who was not concerned, who thought each and every one of them, the president, the minister himself, had just had to go on with their business as though things were normal, when clearly things actually went normal.
Yeah, good evening, Vuyo, and good evening to your listeners and your audience tonight. I agree with you 100% that I think that there's certainly an issue of misunderstanding and a misalignment between the police commissioner, between the minister of police, and between the president on his performance, and as well as the general understanding of where his standing is within the SAPS and in relation to those two other officials. I think that for whatever reason, the National Police Commissioner felt incredibly comfortable and confident in his position when that clearly wasn't the case, but also when there were very clearly serious allegations against him, of obstructing, an investigation and the work of IPID, in a legal matter. And those chickens have, in a way, come home to roost, really. We may have seen the president, express confidence in the police commissioner when he addressed the nation during the July unrest. And he was flanked by, the National Police Commissioner and other police officials. But that doesn't mean that his legal troubles and those charges leveled against the police commissioner had gone away. All of those charges of gross, really, misconduct, still stand. And this is why we're in this position today, where a board of inquiry will now have to look into his fitness to hold office.
And that's really the point, isn't it? Because it's one thing to be, confident, knowing that you're doing your job very well, thank you very much, and then if for whatever reason you're not getting along with your minister and in turn with his boss, which is the head of the executive, and that's the president. Here we are talking about things he didn't do. He blatantly refused to help the IPID in its investigation. The matter went to court and he lost. And that is what is now forming the basis of what the president has written to him about, tell me why I shouldn't suspend you. So you would have thought that someone in that position and knowing that he did what he did would have been a lot more circumspect in how he dealt with his issues. But certainly from the conversation I had with him, he didn't seem bothered at all.
I agree with you 100%, and I would love to have some insight as to what his thinking was behind that, where his confidence, came from. Because, like you said, the rest of us, looking into the situation, we realized that there was certainly trouble on the horizon. Look, I'm also. And I think it's important for your viewers to know that since the end of apartheid, we've had the sort of cycle and churn of national police commissioners coming into office and leaving office in disgrace. If you think of National Police Commissioner Jackie Selebi, who was found guilty of fraud and corruption. If you think of Bheki Cele's term as National Police Commissioner and the cloud of scandal that surrounded his exit, even though he was later cleared. You think of Ria Piecha and everything that happened post Maragana and the Farlam Commission. And then you think of Khumutso Pahlane, who him and his wife were charged with fraud and corruption, and he was then eventually suspended and dismissed on charges of gross misconduct. So we really just have this churn of political office holders, let me put it that way, in this position, who you seem to leave under really suspicious circumstances, or even on charges and convictions. So it's this is more than even just a poison chalice, and I still struggle to understand where Commissioner Sitole's confidence came from in this matter.
And I think you've touched the nub of it, because on the one hand, here's someone who has clearly committed a wrong. In fact, he has been negligent. In fact, probably worse than that. And on the other, you really sketching, that whole history, of his predecessors and what actually saved him which was essentially politics. And it becomes particularly relevant considering the fact that what Sitole was supposed to answer to IPID for had to do with his conduct at an ANC conference. So perhaps he may have had this sense of, because I did this for the mighty and all too powerful ANC, I should get away with it.
Yeah, which was honestly a very silly position to take. Somebody like Ria Piecha may have felt that she was, completely insulated, given what happened at Marikana and everything that came out of the Farlam Commission. And evidence that we saw of, political office holders and police officials colluding with each other, in the weeks and months that led up to that fateful day, and those fateful days in August 2012. But even she wasn't safe. So it's, I'm so confused as to why, Commissioner Sitole would have truly believed that he was fine, and that charges like this would somehow disappear or evaporate, when that absolutely isn't the case, especially for multiple people before him in the exact same position.
Well, I'm going to we have a clip of the deputy president who, during his walkabouts, electioneering, was actually asked by journalists about this latest move by the president. And here's what David Mabuza, the deputy president, had to say about his boss and the matter at hand.
The decision rests with the president, and I'm not going to challenge the observation of the president. I always believe in his wisdom, and he's a man that really is above petty conflicts. If he takes a decision, it means there is a real reason why he takes that decision.
If the president takes a decision, it is never without reason. And if you, we listen to political analysts all the time. They talk about the character that is the president. When does he move? People often criticize him for taking too long, to move. So when he does move, for certain that things can only go in one direction and one direction only. And I dare say, Commissioner Sitole is really probably history. But then it takes me to my next question, which is a subject you've dabbled in your book. There are people who have been suggesting today that on the back of this inquiry that the president has set up, which is going to look into Sitole, perhaps going forward in appointing not only the National Commissioner of Police, but perhaps the entire top brass of the police, we should look at something like what he's doing now with the in the process leading up to the finding a replacement for the Chief Justice, what he did with the appointment of the National Director of Public Prosecutions. Just your thoughts. Also, picking up on some of the things you have written yourself.
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I think that that is certainly a suggestion with merit. I think, honestly, there's very little that I think the president could do in his appointment of a new police commissioner. And I don't mean to, seal the fate of Commissioner Sitole. Obviously, a board of inquiry has to take place, and that process needs to run its course. But certainly, in looking at the appointment of police commissioners, that there may be some space and some room, to sort of open the process up and to have that be something that's more transparent, that's, invites public participation, however limited, or having a more sort of open process around that. I think that that's one suggestion, and I think that another really, strong and useful suggestion is also to look within the ranks of the police. A large number of the list of people who and former police commissioners who I listed earlier came from outside of the SAPS as a body, and that's meant that they've really struggled to grapple with the institution itself. I mean, this is a large institution that had a budget of 99 billion rand in 2020, has a staff complement of around 193,000 people. So you're talking about an institution that is very, very capable of growing its own timber. And in that sense, it could very well be possible that the next police commissioner is actually from within the ranks, of the police themselves. And of course, people will say that.
But can there really be a hard and fast rule around that? Because take General Sitole, who is, as he said in that clip we played earlier, he's a career policeman. In other words, what he didn't say was that I'm not here because of, politics, and I'm not here to play politics. Of course, what has happened is a different matter altogether. Probably goes against the very things he says he, stands for, or he is against. But if you look at those who came before, before him, General Pierre, for example, came from the private sector, and a big argument was made at the time, about the fact that she was an outsider, so wouldn't be, drawn into what was happening within, Braskap and everything else that that went with that. But if you look at how she quickly, got involved in the politics of the day. So does it really matter, or should it matter whether the next commissioner is a career police man or woman, or they're coming from the private sector or anywhere else for that matter?
Yeah, I think that there's, a possibility of even having a sort of hybrid selection model as well, that essentially allows for an open and participatory process in terms of finding and appointing, a police commissioner, as well as looking within the institution. I don't think that we have to say, finding from somebody outside has failed, so we're never going to do that again. Or that looking internally has failed, so we're never going to do that again. I think that there's a way to do both of those things at the same time. And I would implore, the president in his decision to be, or his next decision for police commissioner, to be really considered at the candidates that he's looking at. Because this is, policing is an institution, and the SAPS are an institution that have lost the trust of South Africans. The number of South Africans who express trust in the police has more than halved in the past decade, according to Afrobarometer survey data, where 56% of South Africans trusted the police in 2011. This year in 2021, only 26% of South Africans say that they trust the police. That is really an institution that is suffering, a crisis of confidence from the public. And so it becomes that much more important to have an appointment process and to have a process to consider candidates that takes all of those things into account. That, you need somebody with good operational skills. You need a competent administrator. You need somebody who will be impervious to political interference. And at the same time, you need somebody to lead an institution that's suffering from high levels of a lack of trust and confidence, from the public.
And that's where we're going to leave it. Special thanks to you, Ziyanda Stirman, who is a security expert, but also the author of the book, Can We Be Safe? The Future of Policing in South Africa. Unions, of course, have also reacted to this. I have a statement in front of me from the Independent Policing Union of South Africa, which welcomes the president's moves and says, in part, Under Commissioner Sitole's leadership, SAPS's ability to solve murders and armed robberies has drastically deteriorated. Just to date, civil claims against the SAPS have skyrocketed to over 16 billion rands. Crime intelligence has been in shambles for a very long time, and there seems to be no strategic plan by the Commissioner to rescue SAPS from its forever dwindling image. Things I asked him during that interview we played for you earlier. After the break, elections of a different kind. Could university elections be telling us something about the youth we often say is apathetic? From ward to ward, town to town, city to city, politicians are canvassing votes for the November 1 local government elections. Well, student politicians across university campuses are just as busy. The battle lines are drawn particularly between ANC-aligned South African Students' Congress and the EFF Student Command. Now, while we cannot extrapolate from the results that are coming through what will happen on November 1 or in 2 years' time when the country goes to provincial and national elections, there's probably one or two things that we can pick up about the youth we often say is apathetic. For this conversation, let's welcome SASCO General Secretary Butanani Tobela, EFF Student Command President Mandla Shikwambana. Vusi Gumbi is a young political scholar and last year's winner of One Day Leader Series. Good evening, gentlemen. Thanks very much for your time. I don't know who between the EFF Student Command and SASCO have bragging rights given what has happened up until now, but I leave that up to you. But maybe I should just ask you first how you feel as SASCO, Butanani, about how things have gone so far in the campuses that have already held elections.
Well, thanks, Vuyo, and good evening to the listeners at home. But one, I think we do own the bragging rights because I think out of the 26 institutions that exist in South Africa, we are owning or leading rather 15 of those. And as you know, we're in a process of renewing the mandate from institutions, and recently, particularly with Gauteng, that has been the first province that has gone to SRC elections, we are enjoying. We have recently won VET, and we have recently won UP for the first time in the history in its 100 years from the ballot. We have won the president and we have won the SG straight from the ballot. And we moved to have won also UJ, which was announced yesterday. Of course, we are currently awaiting
Did you say UJ?
The final results of the University of Limpopo.
Did you say UJ? I mean, are these numbers wrong? It says here, Doornfontein campus, EFF 12 seats, and SASCO 1. So
yes, I mean, if you count, UJ has 4 campuses, each is made up of 12. And we have won Soweto campus, we have won APB, we obviously have 1 seat in APK, but if you round up, the total seats of the SRC at UJ is 48, and we're sitting at 25, and EFF is sitting at 23.
Okay. Mandla, what do you have to say about the performance?
Thank you very
so
much.
far?
Thank you very much, Let me take this opportunity and thank all members of the EFF Student Command across the country, and also members of the Student Command at the University of Johannesburg, Auckland Park campus, and also Doornfontein. We have voted for the EFF Student Command, where we have actually made sure that we win those SRC elections. And also let me take this opportunity and thank the EFF Student Command members at University of Limpopo, the result just announced, the EFF Students Command has won those SRC elections. Again, also, I heard the Secretary General of SASCO saying that he's awaiting the results of Limpopo to come out. I'm giving you the results, Nopala of SASCO, that University of Limpopo, you have lost it. And then we are waiting the results of University of Venda, which they will be released hopefully by 9:30. So then the EFF Students Command is continuing to do well in the institutions of higher learning. I mean, recently in Johannesburg, where there were SRC elections taking place, we have managed to win, or we have managed to get more votes from TUT, where students have voted for the EFF Students Command, and also we have managed to win and get more votes from UG, and we are getting more votes also in other institutions. Your Sol Plaza University also, they were in the SRC, I mean, in elections, where the Students Command has also increased in terms of votes there. So the young people of South Africa, they are giving South Africans a signal that it's time now, they are demanding a change. And then how do they demand a change? You can see in the institutions of higher learning that they are actually trusting the EFF Students Command with power to say it's only the Students Command which is relevant in the politics of young people of South Africa, currently where we are sitting. And they're continuing to trust us with power and voting for us in the SRCs. So the issue of other issues that which are happening after the elections, which are actually, that have taken place, is what the, Comrade Butana is always recurring to say they are doing well and all those kind of things. But history will tell you that it's only after the inception of the Students Command where we have seen these so-called young lions, who are old lions today as we speak, are collapsing. The real young lions are the members and is the EFF Students Command, and is taking over in these institutions of higher learning. And not so long, we are going to reflect it in the ballot, where we are going to put our mother body into count.
But Sanani, what draws students to, the ballot box on campuses? I'm talking here because on the back of, at certain universities, you're seeing a 49 or close to 50% turnout when you look at eligible students. In others, of course, the numbers are quite low, but in certain universities, you're seeing marginal increases. What is attracting students to actually go and vote?
Well, thank you. Before I attend to your question, I think we must also, as we continue to debate, give facts. SPU was led by EFF, and currently, which was announced yesterday, SASCO has won it. So I thought the president must get a real briefing. But look, Vuyo, I think with the introduction of the online voting, there's one fact that we were quite uncomfortable with it. But if we're honest, if you look at campuses, take for instance TUT, where we have won, for the first time in its history, you have plus minus 50% of the students that have actually participated in the elections, and TUT was voting online, and this time around was well coordinated and such that we have these results that we're having. But I think as SASCO one, we have declared this year as a year of the new student, the techno-service student that might not even see class, that might not be in front of the lecturer. So we need to adapt, and that is what exactly is happening on the ground. Most institutions have gone to elections using the online platform, and that has shown a serious change in terms of the participation and the presence of students. Because, it's quite convenient to sit in your room and be able to vote. Because what has been, for instance, if you go to UJ, there's been a case where elections had to be stopped, even at TUT, because there was stampede. And some students don't actually enjoy or are quite impatient, generally, as young people, in terms of standing in the queues and whatnot. We can't run away from the fact that there is a decline in participation by young people in general. But with the introduction of the online learning and the introduction of online elections, we have seen quite a different change. And of course, it also speaks to the model of campaigning that you have now. We are not yet at the point where we use influencers, but we're at the point where we use our own candidates on YouTube. They use the Facebook live platforms. They use Twitter Space, and that is where you find young people. So that is why voting in Institute of Higher Learning has actually became very convenient, and also keeping in touch with the young people where you find them. You used to find them on campus, but they are not there anymore. So where you find them is online. And that is why we believe that there has been a drastic increase in participation in elections because of the introduction of the online elections or voting. Okay.
Mandla, from your perspective, what is enabling students to still be keen to go and vote in these elections?
Thank you very much, Bo. The reason students they are voting in their numbers in these SRC elections, particularly with this online or the introductions of online voting, it's simply because it's convenient for the students to participate into voting, because the young people, they are always on their phones. Young people are people who are technologically wise, and it becomes easy for them. Everywhere in their corner they can go and vote without going to a institution for physical voting, where they must be queuing on the lines there waiting for their time to come inside and vote. But they are able now to vote in their numbers simply because they are voting from their comfortable spaces for as long as they've got enough resources to participate or partake in that process of voting. But however, also the students, they are also voting in their numbers, because students are people who are intellectuals also, and who, if there's elections, they check as to what are the dynamics on the ground, what could make them to go and vote in numbers. I'll give you a practical example now. Here at University of Venda, where I'm currently in, they're running their elections here now. Many people, for the first time in the history of University of Venda having elections, we've got more than 7,000 to 10,000 students participating in the process of voting, simply because they are voting online, and also simply because they are tired of the current leadership which is actually representing them there, which is SASCO, that which we are talking about. Now the students in their numbers, now they are going to vote. They really want to remove the sitting government because there's nothing they've done there. There's nothing they've assisted students with. Any worse is that there was no leadership in that institution, and COVID-19 and online systems worsen things.
I'll give you some time. I'll give you some time to campaign a little later. Let's give Vusi Kumbi. Let's bring in Vusi Kumbi now. Vusi, I mean, just listening to both SASCO and the EFF Student Command. Are you picking up anything that can perhaps teach those of us who are running, whether it's local government, provincial or national government elections, about perhaps what we may need to do to adapt in order to attract the young voters who are often said to be apathetic?
Hi, Boyo. Thank you for having me. I think what both Butanan and Drendani have alluded to is the fact that they are active in addressing student affairs. And I think that's the distinction that you see between student leaders and leaders in government. Because the problem now in South Africa is that government leaders seem to be remote from the people they claim to best represent. That's why now you see, elections at universities, within university spaces, being competitive, because SASCO for a very long time dominated the university space until the EFF Student Command, which came in and was effectively seen as the voice of the downtrodden. That's why I think there was a year when, the EFF Student Command won a number of universities around the country. So what now you see is that student bodies are actually leading their parent or mother organizations in saying these are some of the effective ways that young voters can be attained. However, the issue and the gap that both of them, that I picked up from both of them, is the fact that they talk about young people being online, they talk about young people being on social media. That is a distorted view when you look at South Africa and their broad demographics. When you look at young people, students represent a little amount or a small portion of the South African youth and its demographics. Large number of South African youth are not in universities. Large number of them do not even have matric certificate. So when it comes to political organizations and looking into gaining young voters, they must be in touch with them. And social media is definitely not the only way to get in touch with young people, especially if you're looking at South Africa, where it is, and the broad demographics of the youth population. So I do believe that there's a trend in what we see in universities, but it's not likely to translate into the local government elections because, like I said, young people in institutions of higher learning are not a representation of South Africa and the dreams and aspirations of ordinary people on the ground.
Very interesting points there. Let me start with the former, where you're saying they may well be teaching their parents, a thing or two. But when you watch what the EFF is doing, when you watch what the ANC is doing, do you think they're listening to your EFF student commands and your SASCOs and taking notes? Vusi?
Sorry, yes?
Yeah, I'm saying on the point you made first that they are teaching, that your EFF student commands and your SASCOs may well be teaching their parents, as you call them, a thing or two. But do you get a sense when you watch the campaigns, of your EFFs, the campaigns of your ANCs, do you get a sense that they are listening to their young members and are indeed taking notes from what they are seeing them doing at universities?
Certainly not. And I'm going to say this without fear of contradiction, because this has been a sentiment that student activists see student politics as a stepping stone to politics within either the EFF or the ANC Youth League, and by extension the African National Congress. That's why even now older people or parents of young people who are within these political parties, I wouldn't think they take much from them, because young people right now in politics and all these political parties that have introduced young candidates, it's a disingenuous move, because young people have complained about a lack of representation. Young people have been disengaged because they feel disenfranchised, being led by older people. And now, as a political move, as political maneuvering, you see political parties bringing young faces. It's more or less, for lack of a better term, as fronting, So I don't believe that older people will be influenced by what's happening in universities. I don't believe that the SRC election results that are happening at the University of Limpopo, for example, will have any bearing whatsoever in what might happen in the municipalities around the University of Limpopo, or what's happening in the University of Johannesburg will have bearing on the surrounding communities. Because again, a key issue here is understanding that a university represents the broad demographics of South Africa. So in the University of Johannesburg, for example, you find students from the Western Cape, you find students from the Eastern Cape whose struggles from back home are not the same as the struggles for people, say, in informal settlements in the city of Johannesburg. So I think it's a distorted view, especially for the two comrades here today, to think that what we see in university spaces is what we are likely to see in the local government elections and maybe the next general elections. However, I do believe that when it comes to representation, or when it comes to being in touch with their respective constituencies, student-based movements do much better than government or than their mother bodies.
Thank you, Vusi. And that said, I'm going to give both of them an opportunity to front Sitole. I'm giving you guys, Mandla and Butanani, a minute each to tell us why we should vote for the party of your choice. I'm going to start with you, Butanani. Your minute starts now. Butanani, why should we vote for the ANC?
Why you must vote for the African National Congress? Because the African National Congress remains the only party that is committed, in delivering and servicing the people of this country. And it has actually over the years proven that, as slow as it may be. But I think looking in our manifesto, the president has quite made it clear that we are fixing the problems that we're facing as an organization. One, we have waged a serious fight against corruption, but two, we have pledged to deliver for the people of this country and to also deploy honest people who are going to render services that are required to the people, but also do as much as we can to deliver the services so that we cut
your minute is
cut what the service.
Thank you very much. Mandla, your minute starts now.
Thank you. I think Comrade Butanani must refrain from using the word committed in the same sentence when he's going to put the ANC, because the ANC is never committed in anything. But why should you people of South Africa vote for the EFF is simply because a majority of our people are not working in South Africa. There are no jobs in South Africa. Majority of our people are suffering in South Africa. Majority of our people do not have water in their communities in South Africa as we speak today. Majority of our people, they've got a serious crisis of electricity today as we speak. So all those people who are suffering, because there are no roads in their communities, there's no water in their communities, there's no electricity in their communities, and worse on top of that, they are not working. They've got all reasons to vote for the EFF and do not vote for the ANC, simply because the ANC has been in power for the past 27 years now, and they keep on saying they are committed.
Okay.
They are committed. They are committed.
Up.
They will commit. And
thank
commit
you.
and
Thank
commit
you.
And there's nothing.
Vusi Kumbi, why is it important for young people to go and vote on November 1?
People that are interested.
Vusi?
Yes. Young people, it's important because, remember, young people make a majority of the South African population, and the future cannot exist without young people. None can exist without the other. I think it is important in ensuring that our democracy matures. It is important in ensuring that we hold our leaders accountable, because without accountability, the theory or the fundamental principle of democracy all but diminishes. And it is important to go out there to the polls. But not only that, I think beyond the polls, what is important is ensuring that young people engage the political process more routinely so that our democracy matures, we hold our leaders accountable, and ensure that service delivery is the order of the day in the next upcoming administration for local government elections.
Vusikumbi, thank you very much. Special thanks also to Mandla Shikwambana and Butanani Tobela, the voices of young people. To that local government election news story that has been hogging the headlines over the past couple of days now. In and about 10, the Democratic Alliance in KwaZulu-Natal has announced that it is removing its controversial Phoenix posters. This comes a day after party leader John Steenhuisen defended the posters, which read, "The ANC called you racists, the DA calls you heroes." In a statement today, the DA's chairperson in KwaZulu-Natal, Dean McPherson, took ownership of the message on the posters, saying it was an effort on his part to honor the bravery of people who were left to fend for themselves. He apologized for the hurt the posters caused some people, saying they were sanctioned by the party leadership. But this is what John Steenhuisen had to say last night.
The top leadership of the DA and the campaign team are responsible for the messaging. It may have caused some miscommunication. There may have been people who've misinterpreted it, and for that I'm sorry. But what I'm not going to be sorry for is standing up for non-racialism and standing up against the racial scapegoating.
Oh, an interesting one there. McPherson is taking responsibility for what he says he was responsible for, but John Steenhuisen last night told us that it was the work of that election committee that is responsible for the messaging of the party in these elections. What is it? Maybe we will know, hopefully, someday as to what exactly happened. But on the program last night, political analysts Professor Mcebisi Ndletyana and Asanda Ngwasheng questioned the chosen focus of the DA's campaign in Phoenix and the racial undertones its campaign messaging had, and this is how they saw it.
In case for the DA to exploit, especially the events around the upheaval and the looting and all that, though that at the incident was partly orchestrated by ANC people infighting within, and that alone, I think, is exploitable. So they did not have to go to this kind of racism. So they went for the most obvious. They kind of succumbed to base instincts of prejudice and racism. Instead of thinking creatively about how to capitalize of that ANC infighting. However, though, I think the fact that they didn't bother to stretch their imagination is to some degree an indication of how much they have resigned themselves to being a right-wing conservative party. It's not dumb politics. It's a demonstration of sheer incompetence. Because you don't need to be racist when there's a lot of material to play with.
Why is it that the DA has always relied on dog whistling, on this harking back to apartheid language in all of their campaigns? Every single election we had take back Cape Town. We've had all kinds of posters that basically kind of demonstrate or show that there's still this belief that certain areas like Cape Town belong only to white people and should continue to belong to white people. And if you live in Cape Town, you'll know that for the most part Cape Town is very much a white city. In fact, it has the highest number of white people in South Africa concentrated in one area. And so this kind of politics works for them. But the sad part is that white people only constitute 8% of the South African population. The rest is black, colored, and Indian. And so they're harking back again to the very same old and trusted apartheid politics of throwing in Indians and colored people as their buffer zone, as their sort of, the people that they send out when they want to do and say things that are racist, because it's more complex to explain internalized racism than it is to explain plain old racism.
Piece of advice there from our panel of analysts that looked at this issue last night. Perhaps to John Steenhuisen, who as leader of the Democratic Alliance should take responsibility for what happened, irrespective of what we may have been told. Only not too long ago, he was the one who said that the leader, the buck stops with the leader must take responsibility. And that's exactly what he must do, take responsibility and not leave it to some election committee or the leader of the party in KwaZulu-Natal. And that's your watchdog for this evening. Do join us again tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. sharp. Have a good night.